Hey everybody, welcome to Thoughts on Thursday. I am not in my typical spot. I am not in my homeschool room. I'm actually in my husband's office that is down in the basement. We have the Blue Angels are here in town for an air show, and they just happen to be practicing directly above my house, and it's so loud. I mean, like thunderously loud at our house, but also kind of fun to just be able to look right outside our property and to see them. But anyways, so today for Thoughts on Thursday, I just want to take a little bit of time today to talk about stewardship. Stewardship is something that I have been thinking a lot about lately. Maybe just like the point I'm at in my life. I'm looking back at my life up to this point and looking at how I stewarded the things that God has given me. Some things I feel like I stewarded well, other things I don't feel like I stewarded so well, and then some things I don't know if I even realized I was supposed to be stewarding. And then I'm looking ahead to the future and going, how do I continue to steward well, and how do I continue to do the right things with everything that God has entrusted to me. And when we talk about stewardship, I want to say I'm not just talking about like the gifts and the talents that God has given you. I'm talking about everything that He has given you, all of the resources, all of money, finances, your children, everything that God has entrusted to you. You must learn to steward well. And at the end of our lives, we know that we will give an account for our lives. Nobody else is going to be giving an account for us, but we will give an account for our life and what we did and how we stewarded the things that God entrusted to us. And if I could go back in time to young Kim, 20, 21, 22-year-old Kim, I wish I could. I wish I could go back in time and speak to her. I don't think that young Kim even really probably could have articulated what stewardship means. I think that if you would have asked me back then, if I was stewarding well what God gave to me, I probably would have thought, yeah, I think I am. What I thought about, the things that were in my mind in regards to what God had given to me was things like, am I making good choices? Am I going through the doors He wants me to go through? I understood that there were doors that open that you're not necessarily supposed to walk through. And I was thinking about, am I living out, God's will for my life? Am I thinking about what he has for me and furthering the kingdom? And those are all really great questions to ask and really great things to think about, especially at that young age. But that is not the whole of stewardship. That's probably a small piece of stewardship, making good choices. That is a part of stewardship. But stewardship is so much bigger and so much more than that. Stewardship is also taking a lot of responsibility for not just the things that God has given you, but responsibility for the choices that you make, the things that you do, the gifts that God has given you that affect other people. For example, I believe that one of the gifts that God has given me is for songwriting. And when I write a song, I feel a burden and a conviction to do my best to write it with conviction and let it be theologically sound. And how do I do my best to make sure it's theologically sound? Well, I have to be a good student of the word. I have to be in the Bible every day, reading the Bible. This has to be a big part of my life. And not just reading the Bible, but doing actual Bible studies. And I love all the different study guides and different Bibles. And I'm always looking for like a new one to teach me something new about a different book of the Bible. But my point is this is part of being a good steward, is you're thinking about the responsibility you have in all of the gifts that God has given you. As a singer, I think about how I'm stewarding my voice well, taking care of my voice. I want longevity. I would like to be able to sing when I'm 80 years old, and I'm thinking about how I'm taking care of my voice now to make sure that it lasts me that long, And I think about how my life affects other people. I think about the fact that God has given me an influence and a voice with other people, and that matters. I have the fear of God in me about that. I don't take that lightly. And again, good stewardship is, am I doing the very best that I can to keep pointing people to Jesus, and to bring something pure and good and holy that contributes Jesus to their lives, and not even my own agenda or my own plan, or whatever else. This is all part of good stewardship. And man, young people, especially young worship leaders, I just want to encourage you to really consider this and to think about this, and to know that stewardship, it will often require you to have some hard conversations, some difficult conversations, conversations where you might be required to ask a lot of questions. And it's okay if you don't fully understand or you don't know. If you are, again, you can apply this to your life. Stewardship is for all of us, no matter what gifts and talents we have. But I do right now, for just a moment, really want to speak to our talented worship leaders and songwriters. If you're thinking about recording or talking to a label or any of those things, or with your church, talking about recording with your church, there are hard conversations to have, and it's okay if you don't know everything. Especially when you're young, you're not expected to know everything. It's hard to admit when you're young. You like to think you know everything. Let's all be honest. But in all reality, you're still learning, you're still growing, and it's okay to ask a lot of questions, and even to say, "Can you explain this to me?" Good questions to ask and to think about. Like, if your skill and your talent, whatever it is, okay, this could be any skill or talent you have, whether it's a mind for business or mathematics, like whatever it is, whatever your skill and talent is, something just to think about. What if your skill, your talent brings in a lot of money? Are you thinking about, where does that money go? Is that money going to you? Are you responsible for that? How do you live generously? How do you steward that money well? How do you make it grow? How do you take care of yourself, take care of your family? How do you think about the future? I mean, there's just so many aspects of even being a good steward just with our finances. These are just kind of tough conversations sometimes, because sometimes it's uncomfortable things to talk about. We're all really happy talking about God and what God's called us to, and how do we serve God with our gifts and our talents. But when it starts bringing in money, or it starts affecting others around us or whatever, that's when it gets a lot harder. And this would be my greatest encouragement to you in this is why it is so incredibly important that you know the voice of God. You need to know when he's speaking to you and what he's speaking to you. You need to know how to spend time with Jesus, to seek him, to wait for an answer, to wait for a response. You need to teach yourself the patience of, sometimes there might be a lull. You're waiting to hear from God. And we live in a world that is going so fast all the time. Our world does not accommodate slow and patience very well at all. But this matters so much, because there should be something inside of us that says, I don't want to move until you say to move. I don't want to step outside of this until you say to step outside of this, because we don't want to be outside of his will. We don't want to be outside of his timing. We don't want to be operating in our own strength. And the only way that you're going to know if you are operating within his will, within his timing, in his ways, in his strength, is if you know the voice of God. And this is the key to good stewardship. Good stewardship is something that we learn and get better at over time. It is wisdom. It is seeking counsel from people with more experience from you. Stewardship is responsibility. It's all of these things I've been listing, but it starts with knowing the voice of God and holding on to that, and knowing when he is saying yes and no, step, don't step, wait, hang on. This is so vitally important. And I feel like a broken record when I bring this up a lot and talk about this a lot. If you're a worship leader and you've ever asked me in a Q&A, how do I grow as a worship leader? I feel like sometimes everyone hates my answer because it's not go to this worship school or study this or, whatever. It's you have to draw closer to Jesus. You have to have this incredible relationship with him where you just know his voice so well and you know when he's speaking to you. And this is how we become good stewards of all that he has entrusted to us. As a mother, man, I think about this all the time with my kids. I think about how I'm parenting them, and sometimes I'm facing something, especially as a homeschool mom, and I'm just like, oh, I was not prepared to do algebra again in my life. And how do I do this? And I'm literally praying and I'm asking God, please give me divine strategy of how to teach algebra. That might be a laughable thing and sound funny, maybe even crazy to some of you. But I believe God wants to be involved in all the details, in all the aspects, that he cares about something even as simple as that. So even in the way I'm parenting and teaching my children to be a good steward of the way that God entrusted them, these precious lives, to me, I am seeking his voice and I'm asking him for help. I'm asking him for strategy. I'm asking him to show me the way and the path of how to be a good steward. Remember, at the end of your life, it is you give an account for all that God has given to you, that you stand before him and you get to talk about the ways that you stewarded the things that he entrusted to you. And I want to remind you, artists of all kinds, and I just, whether it's you write songs or create music or you paint or whatever it is okay for you to take the gifts and the talents that God has given you and to steward them well and to use what God has put in your hands to feed your family and to take care of you. A lot of times there's a message out there that makes a lot of people in that world as artists and creatives, especially within the church, feel like everyone else out there with a talent and skill for, business or whatever, that they can use their talents and their gifts to generate income to take care of their families, but somehow it's like unholy for you. And I just want to say that that's a lie. It's not truth. That God has given you something that he's entrusted to you, and he wants it to be a blessing to your life and to your family. You are going to be a blessing to other people, living out your life well and stewarding the things that he has given to you, but he also wants it to be a blessing to you and to your family. And isn't generosity so much better when it's given with a cheerful heart? For example, we love the business people at church who've made a lot of money, that they've been good stewards of their gifts and their talents, and they live generously and they help fund missions trips and different things within the church and the body of Christ, and we love that and we celebrate that. And wouldn't it be just as amazing if, even as an artist, that the gifts and the talents that God gave you generated a good income for you, that you could also live generously? And isn't generosity so much more beautiful when it's just cheerfully given, when it's just like, I want to be generous with what God has given me. I want to be generous with my time. I want to be generous with my talents. I want to be generous with my gifts. I want to be generous with my money, because God has taken such good care of me and I have been a good steward of what God has given me. Does this make sense? It all connects, right? Generosity is so much more beautiful when it's something that you're giving on your own accord and your own choice. So today, I just want to encourage you to be a good steward of everything that God has given you. Don't be afraid to bring God into every little thing, every little aspect. And don't be afraid to have the hard conversations, to ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid of the humility of saying, I don't know, and seeking out wisdom and counsel. And don't be afraid to wait and be patient. Let God speak, draw closer to him and know his voice. This is the most important step of being a good steward.